With nearly 40 years of history to pick from, sometimes we all wish Legacy would just focus on the legacy part of Transformers. But there's a reason Legacy needs G1 figures, and that reason is something Legacy Needlenose is doing better than anyone else. Welcome back to the show, it's Gay from A. Needlenose's vehicle mode is a gray and blue supersonic jet based on the F-16 XL. He has a bright red cockpit and a number of geometric shapes to be found around the figure, mostly consolidated to the center line, almost resembling a spine. Something that bothers me about this vehicle mode is that the gray paint toward the front of the jet is distractingly thick and doesn't match the plastic color very well at all. I do think that the all-red cockpit looks a little silly too, and it would have benefited if the struts on the canopy were painted in. Seeing the red and blue together really reminds me of the Autobot tracks, and these two actually share a pretty interesting connection. Both of them wear a sort of knight's visor in robot mode, and the IDW comics took this visual similarity to its logical conclusion by making them brothers who were in business with each other before separating over creative differences. You know, Michael Jackson had some creative differences with his family too. Now, Needlenose was initially intended for Seizure Earthrise, but something about him makes me think he's kind of a lost Power of the Primes figure. And that could be because the shiny striping on his wings looks like the glossy stickers from that line, or it could be how goofy this jet looks, as it's clearly a thin jet-shaped slab resting atop a folded robot body. You guys remember what I said about shell formers? This is a half shell former. The shell's only on the one side. This is fairly accurate to the original Needlenose toy, and generally I think jets tend to be some of the weaker alternate modes for Transformers, as they're often nerfed visually to facilitate a much stronger robot mode. I don't think it's unfair to question why they maintained this outdated design. However, the rest of the figure more than makes up for it in my opinion, which we'll get to soon. But at least one of the ways that the vehicle has been improved is how the weapons can interact with the jet mode. We'll talk about them exhaustively later, but in vehicle mode, Needlenose's weapons can plug onto the tips of his wings or combine together to form a larger booster that plugs into his rear. As far as I know, this wasn't possible with G1 Needlenose, so it's cool that they added extra functionality to the vehicle mode, and it's one of those things that makes this figure feel like a straight upgrade. The transformation is really simple, again mostly aping the broad strokes of the original toy, but updating it in a modern and interesting way. The legs swing out and down. You don't do much to the jet portion itself, but the way it shifts positions is a really cool move. And I love how the upper body explodes out of the torso, especially how the head flips up to replace the jet's proprietary stand port. Needlenose is bad. Like Michael Jackson bad. He looks incredible. His chest is broad and stocky, his arms are massive, and his legs are blocky and thick. However, due to the nature of the transformation, his legs are super hollow too. This was one of those things that actually put me off from this guy initially, and he definitely would have benefited if at least his thighs were filled in or covered up.
He looks good. He's got a huge ass holes in his thighs, but
I'm a big fan of the detailing on this figure. He has a lot of standard lines and vents, but I love certain touches such as the outlining around his 5mm ports, the individual isolated panels, and these really deep vents in his chest plate. And you'll find even more detail behind and inside his chest that you would only ever see during transformation. It's a small thing, but it's a testament to the overall quality of this figure. But the biggest and most necessary update to Needlenose is the posability. Since the original could only move its arms up and down, his elbows are double jointed and he has wrists. His hips have an incredible range of motion, but it's slightly limited by his wings and backpack, as is his waist. His knees have a very deep bend too. His ankles can tilt almost 90 degrees, and he can point his toes. Even the movement of his head is very unhindered, despite all the clutter surrounding it. An issue I've encountered while posing him though is that his nose cone likes to detach from his backpack, so you'll have to reconnect it often while handling him. But his posing options should feel mostly unlimited, whether that's alone or with his accessories. Now, unlike Michael, who was often accused of sexual misconduct, with virtually no evidence for it, Needlenose definitely came with some little boys. A pair of Targetmasters that I've already forgotten the names of, so we'll just call them Batgirl and Magneto. Both of them are pretty cool and have a decent amount of detail. One that I really enjoy is that they're both molded with their own weapons in hand. Magneto has a blaster and Batgirl has a small sword and shield. These two are teeny tiny, but that makes them just the right size to become a convincing pair of weapons. Both of these guys unfurl to become a set of blasters that Needlenose can dual wield or combine into a larger gun. Magneto becomes a purple rifle with a little underslung dick and balls. What did Hasbro mean by this? While Batgirl is a more sci-fi styled twin barrel blaster. Of the two, I think Magneto might be my favorite. He simply doesn't have any of the issues that Batgirl has, who's coated with this extremely glossy black paint, which makes the details really difficult to see. And after just a bit of playtime with Needlenose, he's already gotten his little handle rubbed off. Wait, I mean he polished his... The paint's missing. It's pretty annoying that following the intended play pattern is enough to damage the figure somewhat, and he probably should have been cast in black plastic. The upside is, of course, that including these two fairly involved accessories was accomplished seemingly without making any compromises to Needlenose himself, which is a huge triumph in my opinion. Whenever we see a Legacy character in Legacy, there's always something that's off. Accessories are missing, alt modes are changed, or they're just plain fucked. But there's a different F word that I would use to describe this treacherous trendsetter, and that's faithful. Legacy Needlenose's raison d'être is essentially to be a faithful update of the original figure, while improving on nearly every aspect. I think Hasbro could stand to be more faithful when updating characters from other series, and Needlenose is the perfect example of how to do it right. And if you want to see another review where a guy comes with a little boy